Well, okay, y'all, here we are back again working on the old 4108 Alpha. Today's adventure was going to be sanding the roof, the back part of the roof, so I could start doing some painting, but then it's still wet up on top, so all I'm doing is gumming up my sandpaper. So I'm going to dry that off and wait for that to kind of gum on. But as I was sanding down close to the edge, I'm going to come down to this area right here with the paint, with the white paint, the white silicone. But then I see this right here. Now, in the prior chapters, I've mentioned these squares. And if you look at this one, it is completely rotted out. And whoever put this in just did a, well, for lack of a better word, a piss poor job of putting it in there. So what I'm going to have to do now, and what I'm in the process of doing, I've got my drill out. I'm going to be drilling all of these back out again, taking that plate off and repairing beneath that plate and putting it back on before I can continue on. So that's what I'm doing right now. Another challenge into Brian's bus adventure. Well, I tell you what, again, looking at this plate, I'm really not apprehensive. I have to take it off, but I'm afraid what I'm going to find under there is just one great big huge rust pile where they just kind of botched it together and tried to put some Bondo over to make it look and temporarily work. Well, let's see what happens when I take this patch panel off. Well, I'll be darned. You think I'm right here? This patch panel was put in there because they just were too damn lazy to fix it right the first time. Anyway, that's what I get to do. I get to go ahead and repair all this back again, stick another piece of metal in there, cut that out, and go again. Wow. People, when they do work, they should just not be. Like I said, I owned a body shop for years in Los Angeles. If any of my people would have done this, they'd been back on the unemployment line immediately. This is just sickening to see something like that happen. Okay, now the first part of this process is just to get all of this rust cleaned up as much as possible. It's going to be a job, but a little bit of prevention here. Oops, a little bit of prevention here for the next time would really be nice. And look at this. I don't know if you can see that thickness right there. That's just some kind of seam sealer that they put in. The plate is really right, but they just, instead of repairing it correctly, they just started filling completely hole in with Bondo or whatever. Not Bondo, it's not even Bondo. It's some kind of seam sealer. I don't know what it is, but it's just junk. Anyway, take all of this back off. Take all the junk back off of this thing. Come back up with some rust inhibitor, take as much of this rust out as possible, then come back and re-rivet it. It has the large rivets in it, as you can see here, so I have to buy some of these large rivets, and those are fairly difficult to find, but they're not just regular pop rivets. Anyway, I'll come back, I'll find them. There's a place I think over in Arizona that has them. I'll give them a call, see if I can order up, well, I imagine I'm going to have to do the other side the same way. So I'll order up a bunch of these larger rivets and then come back and start fixing this thing. It can be fixed, and it should have been fixed correctly the first time, but lazy people. Lazy people. Been easier just to cut this out here, right here, and cut it out right down here and make this and this level. And then fill that back in. That's what should have been done the first time, and that's probably what I'm going to do this time. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to show you why this happened actually. If you notice, the cap or the roof on this thing overlaps this one here. And so the water is just going to run off, just run down, run off. But when you get down to here, they were just too damn lazy to put this panel under this panel. So they put it up on top and just tried to seal it with some very inferior sealer here. And of course that just dried out and started letting this permeate this. And this is exactly what happened. It just started creeping from here. This is the worst spot. It started creeping here. It just went right back up the side of that. But again, I'll be taking all of this seam out, all of the seam sealer out, and putting Sikaflex in there. Sikaflex, again, is the stuff for the marine applications, and it's waterproof. It lasts basically indefinitely, a good 10-15 years before somebody has to address it again. So I'll come back and I'll seal that seam and seal this all back in with Sikaflex. Probably end up fiberglassing this back together too. Anyway, that's what's happening today on this challenge of the Brian's Bus Adventure. Okay, back on the old patch panel here. First part that we have to do, first thing in the order of repairing this, is to get rid of all of the rust that we can. And I've taken my wire brush on my little drill, and I've taken the paint off. You can see there's still Bondo back here. Not Bondo, there's some kind of putty back in here that they tried filling that hole up with. I just am amazed. This here will have to come off. It's just sitting on there. And cut this off here, and cut it off here, right above that. Yeah, right above that. And then just weld or put a new piece in here, probably, I'm sorry, there we go. Cut it off back about here and go along the top, just a little bit above this body line here. Just a hair above it. Re-weld a new piece in there, and then go back and fix it up and sculpt it back in, probably with some fiberglass or whatever. But and again, I'm just amazed at the lack of quality work that somebody's business did on this bus. But hey, that's the way it is. I get to repair it, get to fix it right, because this is the Brian's Bus Adventure. You know, looking at this patch panel, it probably would have worked very effectively if it would have been done correctly. But instead of just throwing a ton of Bondo on this thing, it's not even Bondo, it's some kind of seam sealer here, and then allowing water to get in between that and rusting the panel out, it probably would have worked okay. But again, just not taking enough time to do the job correctly and putting in, you know, like, well, this is the very small portion of the Bondo that I've taken, or the seam sealer I've taken out of there. It was probably maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch thick. And again, that's what allowed the water to get in behind that and then start rusting that whole panel out. But again, I'm going to be fixing it correctly and probably be fiberglassing that all back in and then putting a patch panel, maybe even this one back in again, because it really does fit. And it would have done a good job if it would have been installed correctly, but it didn't. Anyway, that's what I'm doing now, cleaning this all up, taking a chisel to it, getting all this old seam sealer out, and going back and fixing it correctly. This is another challenge in the Brian's Bus Adventure. Okay, y'all, the next little step in this process is getting this all cleaned up. As you can see, I did cut that piece out, the piece that went horizontally, or excuse me, vertically from there to there, and it was just a step up. So again, this piece here originally just hooked into this piece right here, and again, by letting it rust like they did, it just defused itself and rusted out. So I'm going to take that same kind of patch and go from here over to here with that and put it back in place, and then fiberglass probably over on top of that to do the transition. As you can see, also they let it kind of crack right in here also, which is not good. But again, this all can be fixed, and it can be fixed fairly quickly and fairly easily. So here we go. Again, just another piece of the Brian's Bus Adventure. Well, again, I went back up on the roof. As you can see, I have spray painted it with the rusted area with some Rust-Oleum preventative paint. And that should take care of it in the future, hoping. But I will come back and trim a little bit more of that rust out, that jagged edge on that left-right side of that hole, and then come back and do that. But I've also went up and made a template like I did with the other one with the blue tape, and I'll show you what that looks like next. Okay, I've set another sheet of the aluminum, it's not aluminum, it's steel, this thin, I think it's 26 gauge steel out. I've put my template on top of it, and as you can see over here, I'll come out to the edge on this. The tape here, for some reason, I got kind of cockeyed, but again, that's going to be basically a square that'll fit up in there. I'll come back, drill it out, put the Clecons in it, then come back with the Sikaflex and get the rivets and rivet that back in, and then that side will be ready to, again, primer, but I'll be able to then get it back up on the roof and start the painting process again for the roof. Okay, what I've done now, I've brought it over to my bench, and I've taken this red pencil and I've outlined the blue, and that's where my cut line will be for this, well, I don't want to say it's a template, for this patch that's going to go in the side of the bus. So again, all I have to do is see if I can follow my red line. It's not really parity if I get this side here exactly right, but this side, the bottom, I'd really like to have as correct as possible because that should fit in between those two seams real well. Anyway, that's what I'm doing on Brian's Bus Adventure. Okay, it's cut out now. I just took my little snippies and went along the red lines, and I think it's going to be really nice. I'll pull off the blue tape next and go out and see if it fits on the bus. Okay, y'all, pretty well done testing this thing out here. I have it so it's just right even with the top here, but it's tucked in just a little bit down here in the bottom, and that's going to keep it lined up and keep it where it should be. So that's what's going to happen there, and I'm going to take that back off, of course, then get some rivets. I'm going to have to knock this in just a little bit, and if you look right here, you see a dimple. That's where one of the rivets is, so I'm going to have to take a socket, just a regular old car auto socket, put it on there and dimple that back around it so it fits back in there flush. But again, that's a pretty good little fit, and it's a whole lot better than what they had before. I'll do a stop, what they call a stop hole right here, so it'll stop that from splitting anymore, and then I'll come back in there and redo that also. So again, I think it's going to look really good. It's going to be one heck of a lot better than what they had up there before. I may come back later and put a little bit of thicker metal in there, but I'm not quite for sure if I'm going to do that or not yet, because this looks pretty darn good here. So I guess that's about it for this part of the Brian Bus Adventure.